Joining us now, NBC News, White House correspondent Monica Alba, Peter Baker, the chief White House correspondent for the New York Times, and Ashley Parker, the senior national political correspondent for the Washington Post, all joining us now. Thanks so much. Monica, get us started here. Donald Trump, he's not missing a beat blaming the Democrats for this now second apparent assassination attempt. He's writing on social media, not even 24 hours after the incident, quote, "The rhetoric lies as exemplified by the false statements made by comrade Kamala Harris during the rigged and highly partisan ABC debate," his words, "because of this communist left rhetoric. The bullets are flying and it will only get worse." There's a lot of inflammatory stuff there. And now J.D. Vance is blaming the Democrats. But to connect the Democratic candidates with so-called the bullets that are flying is so totally false. They've been denouncing violence.
Exactly, Andrea. President Biden and Vice President Harris over the last 2 days have made a real concerted effort to try to lower the political temperature and the rhetoric. They're condemning anything that resembles political violence. They did so fairly quickly after we saw what unfolded on Sunday. And that has been where they have had to focus and where they want the messaging to be. We did see the White House condemn some language from Elon Musk on X, where he had posted and raised these questions about potential assassination attempts against the current sitting president and vice president that he later deleted. And the White House, for their part, is calling that out as completely irresponsible rhetoric, that even if Elon Musk claims he was joking, that's not anything that should be joked about. And that is how they are choosing to message on this front. They don't want to get into a back and forth on exactly every word that Donald Trump has uttered that has certainly contributed to some of that inflammatory rhetoric in the view of the Harris campaign. So instead, we heard a little bit from Governor Walz, of course, the vice president's running mate, on this in terms of his reaction and how he views the climate. Listen to that.
Politics is about everyone matters and everyone's welcome. That's what we know. And the vice president often says this. It seems like such a simple thing, but it's a lesson that Donald Trump could learn on this. Leaders aren't the people who beat others down. Leaders are the ones who lift people up.
So stressing that words really do matter here, and then also putting a focus on the policy. That's what you've seen from the president and vice president in terms of trying to ensure that Secret Service can get the resources it needs to carry out their critical mission. Andrea.
So, Peter, it's been less than 48 hours since this happened, the attempted assassination, the very speedy arrest, but he was lying in wait for 12 hours. And it's obviously very concerning, but the Trump campaign's narrative has quickly begun to blame the Democrats. You capture this in your latest writing on the New York Times. You write that bomb threats and attempted assassinations now have become part of the landscape, shocking and horrific, yet not so much that they have been forced any real national reckoning. How dangerous is the normalization of rhetoric following something so potentially catastrophic?
Yeah, I mean, we should start by saying we don't know for sure what motivated the suspect who was arrested in Florida on Sunday. And we still don't really have a good sense of what the would-be assassin from July and Butler necessarily thought. He's been killed, so we can't even ask him. But obviously, what we see in two attempted assassinations of a former president within 2 months is that we're in a different kind of era, right? It's not that there hasn't been political violence throughout American history. There has. But to see two attempted assassinations in such a short order obviously stands out. And it comes at the same time we're seeing these bomb threats in Springfield, Ohio, following the former President Trump's comments about Haitian migrants there. Governor DeWine said yesterday there have been 33 bomb threats forcing evacuations of schools and public buildings. And so we've come to a moment in our history where political violence may not be accepted, but it increasingly seems to be expected. It seems to be now part of our dialogue. And the former president wants to blame Democrats, and he points out to various things that they've said about him. That he's a threat to the nation, a threat to democracy. He says that's inflammatory. In the same breath, he then says they're the ones who are trying to destroy our country and are the enemies within. Well, obviously, that seems like pretty commensurate kind of language, if you want to call that out. So, you know, he's got a history of instigating violence and encouraging violence himself that goes far beyond anything that obviously President Biden or Vice President Harris have done, even if you think that they've gone too far. But now he's not just the instigator of political violence, but a potential target of it. And
Ashley, it's not only Donald Trump. Of course, we pointed out that J.D. Vance is also trying to blame Democrats for this without any evidence in the wake of the second attempt. Listen to what he had to say at the Faith and Freedom Coalition dinner in Atlanta last night.
You know, the big difference between conservatives and liberals is that no one has tried to kill Kamala Harris in the last couple of months, and 2 people now have tried to kill Donald Trump in the last couple of months. I'd say that's pretty strong evidence that the left needs to tone down the rhetoric and needs to cut this crap out. Somebody's going to get hurt by it, and it's going to destroy this country. All of us, and I promise I will do my part to tone down the rhetoric, but in particular, the people telling you that Donald Trump needs to be eliminated, you guys need to cut it out or you're going to get somebody hurt.
Peter, it seems that the strategy right now, I'm sorry, I was just talking to Ashley. The strategy seems to be to blame the Democrats because Donald Trump as a victim was one of their most successful moments in the campaign, right, going into the RNC, but also to deflect criticism of Donald Trump's rhetoric.
Well, as we all know, Donald Trump loves to be a victim. But more than that, having covered him since really the very beginning of 2016 and even 2015, another thing I have reported on and observed is that oftentimes his superpower, again, is his shamelessness. So when he is doing something, when he is ratcheting up dark and dangerous rhetoric, when he is inciting violence, when he is telling groups like the Proud Boys to stand back and stand by, when he is talking about Charlottesville and saying there's very good people on both sides, and in all of those moments, he likes to accuse his opponents of the very thing that he is doing, which, as Peter laid out, Donald Trump has used and is using some incredibly extreme rhetoric. And so it's not surprising that following this pattern of his behavior, he would seek to accuse the Democrats of the very same thing.